Good day, viewers. Welcome back to our channel, iNewsU, where we bring you the latest and most significant updates from around the world. I'm John, and today we have a major story that impacts international relations, global security, and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. So grab your cup of coffee, sit back, and let's dive into this important news. Less than a month before NATO's crucial summit in Washington, a significant development has taken place on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and U.S. President Joe Biden have signed a long-awaited bilateral security agreement. This 10-year deal marks Ukraine's 17th agreement under the G7 Joint Declaration of Support, joining the ranks of other countries like the UK, Germany, and France, which have pledged their support to help Kyiv repel Russia's ongoing full-scale invasion. The new agreement, unlike NATO membership, does not obligate an American military response if Ukraine is attacked. Instead, it stipulates that the parties must meet within 24 hours in such an event. It also doesn't outline any new prospects for Ukraine join NATO. However, it is part of a long-term effort by Washington to assist in developing Ukraine's armed forces through training, expanding cooperation in weapon and equipment production, providing military aid, and enhancing intelligence sharing. 1. Support for Ukraine's war efforts. The agreement clearly states that America supports Ukraine's efforts to win the war. President Zelensky has described the deal as a bridge to Ukraine's future NATO membership. 2. Development of modern defense capabilities. The U.S. commits to supporting Ukraine in developing a modern, NATO interoperable force capable of deterring and defending against future aggression. This includes enhancing Ukraine's air and missile defense, cybersecurity, and maritime capabilities. 3. Procurement of modern fighter aircraft. The U.S. will work towards procuring squadrons of modern fighter aircraft for Ukraine, including but not limited to F-16S. 4. Unprecedented executive agreement. Zelensky described as unprecedented. This pact with Washington is an executive agreement signed by the U.S. president and carrying the force of law. 5. Strongest legal terms. Ihor Zhovkva, deputy head of the president's office, has stated that in legal terms, this deal the strongest of the 17 security agreements that Kyiv has signed with other nations. But not everyone is convinced of its unparalleled nature. Oleksandr Kryev, an expert on North American policy at the Ukrainian PRISM think tank, has called the agreement less provocative. He noted, "We expected it to be an indicator of American leadership, some real, powerful measures to ensure our security, investments, and accession to NATO. But in my opinion, it looks less radical than even the agreement with the British." Just earlier this year, on January 12th, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak visited Kyiv and announced a £2.5 billion, $3.2 billion military aid package. During his visit, Sunak and Zelensky signed a new deal on security cooperation, marking the first bilateral commitment as part of the G7 security assurances announced last July. But the U.S. Ukraine agreement is not solely about military support. It also includes significant provisions for non-military cooperation and reforms. The U.S. and Ukraine have agreed to work on economic recovery and reforms, including supporting Ukraine's energy security and its vision of a modern, decentralized energy system integrated with Europe. They will also seek opportunities to provide technical assistance to support the country's economic needs stemming from Russia's war. The agreement also focuses on supporting Ukrainian and American economic development in defense production and infrastructure. A separate article in the deal emphasizes Ukraine's commitment to institutional reforms in line with democratic principles and EU and NATO standards. Kyiv is expected to finalize judicial reforms, implement robust anti-corruption measures, and strengthen the rule of law through reforms in law enforcement, security, tax, and customs institutions. Judicial reform has been a significant challenge for Ukraine. Mikhailo Zhernikov, head of the judicial watchdog de jure, mentioned that the ongoing selection of new constitutional court judges is in its final stages, marking a substantial step forward compared to previous attempts. Looking ahead to NATO's July summit in Washington, Kyiv is hopeful for a more definitive signal regarding its future membership in the alliance. However, U.S. officials have indicated that an invitation is unlikely at this time. President Biden has stated that he was not prepared to support the NATOization of Ukraine before. but the agreement recognizes it as a bridge to Ukraine's eventual NATO membership. When security conditions allow, Kyiv and Washington plan to consult on possible training and exercise programs in Ukraine. The deal also commits Ukraine to incorporating NATO doctrine and combined arms concepts at all levels of its security and defense forces. Since Russia's war against Ukraine began in 2014, Kyiv has been striving to modernize its armed forces and align its military doctrine with NATO standards. Ukraine has gradually transitioned from using Soviet-made arms to those manufactured according to NATO standards. As of March 2022, over 110 models of Ukrainian and foreign-made military vehicles have been approved for use in the armed forces of Ukraine. A crucial aspect of the agreement is the commitment of the U.S. and Ukraine to achieving a just and sustainable peace that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity under international law. The pact emphasizes that Russia must be held accountable. However, the agreement does not explicitly mention the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity, leaving some room for interpretation. Ihor Zhovkva noted that this is the first time Ukraine's victory has been put into writing. Oleksandr Kryev highlighted the need for a clear strategy on how continued U.S. support will advance a Ukrainian victory. The Biden administration is expected to submit a plan to several congressional committees, as mentioned in the aid bill passed in late April, which provided nearly $61 billion for Kyiv. The agreement includes provisions for termination by either Kyiv or Washington, requiring written notice and taking effect 6 months after that. With the 2024 U.S. presidential election on the horizon, the fate of the deal could be uncertain if Donald Trump is re-elected. Trump has repeatedly stated he could end Russia's war within 24 hours if elected, although he has not specified the steps he would take to achieve this. John Bolton, a former national security advisor to Trump, mentioned that Trump could dissolve the agreement shortly after his inauguration. Kryev suggested 2 ways to prevent this: submitting the agreement to Congress for approval and ensuring that any additional agreements within this framework remain valid, even if the initial pact is canceled. This would mean that clauses on financing, weapons transfers, and training would continue to be valid in separate agreements, even if the main agreement is terminated. In conclusion, this U.S.-Ukraine bilateral security agreement represents a significant step in the ongoing efforts to support Ukraine amidst the conflict with Russia. It lays the groundwork for long-term cooperation and support, both military and non-military, while also highlighting the complex geopolitical landscape and the challenges ahead. As always, we'll continue to monitor the situation closely and bring you the latest updates. Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth news analysis and updates. This is your name, signing off. Stay informed and stay safe.